Good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's video, which is all about accuracy. And it's just suddenly struck me that this is quite an emotional moment, folks, because this is officially the last formal teaching session of the whole academic year. So there's nothing scheduled between now and when you submit your final piece of work. So I guess this is it. So it's an emotional moment. I wish we were like in real life and then we could go to the pub and celebrate or something, but as it stands we'll have to cope with giving each other best wishes and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, without further ado, this video is a session all about accuracy, and I just want to go through some examples of what I mean by accuracy, and some examples of poor accuracy, and hence by extension I'll give you some hints on how to avoid making errors in this area. So without further ado, let's just talk about what I mean by accuracy. It all depends, like a lot of things, on context, and what I mean by accuracy in the context of journalism project individual portfolio is basically three things. Firstly, the first aspect of accuracy is that you need to follow the brief. Now this is in detail in the briefing document. It's on Moodle. I'm sure you've read it. Read it again. I also sent an email at the end of last week. One student asked about whether certain articles were acceptable, and I replied to her, and I replied to everybody else. So there's more information on there about the brief. And also check out my PowerPoint and video from week 4, because there's much more information in there about what's acceptable as a piece of work or pieces of work. So that's number one, follow the brief. If you don't follow the brief, that means you're going to lose marks for accuracy because you're not doing what was requested. So if you submit, for example, a load of poetry, that's probably not going to be following the brief, unless somehow it's journalistic poetry, I guess. But poetry, fiction, all of that sort of stuff, that's not really acceptable for this assessment. So follow the brief, and you will be doing accurate work. The second element is professional presentation. Now what I mean by this is how you present your work, literally, in terms of the layout on the page, the word count, the title, the stand first, and everything else that goes with it. Again, I did this in week 4. Check out the PowerPoint and the video, and here you will see in front of you in 1 minute, 1 second even, an example of professional presentation with the title, the stand first, etc, etc, etc. So that's accuracy as well. So if you don't present your work accurately, you're going to lose marks. And the third area, which is what I want to concentrate on today, when I say accuracy for the remainder of today, I will be talking about grammar, spelling, punctuation, how you use numbers, how you use capital letters, and so on and so forth. So that's what I mean by accuracy today. Grammar, spelling, punctuation, number format, etc. Now, if you cast your minds back to when I first spoke about this assessment, I went through the 6-point criteria, and they rather neatly spell out a word which hopefully is memorable, and that word is Oscars. So we have originality, structure, content, accuracy, research, and style. So I will be assessing you on each of those criteria, but the important thing to remember about accuracy is it stands out because it devalues the strong elements of your work. So in other words, if you have a piece of work or a portfolio that's really good for originality, well structured, excellent content, really strong research, and compelling style, if all of that is underpinned with poor accuracy, weak spelling, terrible grammar, really awful punctuation, then the whole building falls down basically. So it devalues your work. That's why accuracy is really important. It's all about credibility, essentially. If you want to be taken seriously as a journalist or a public relations person, you have to have very accurate work. Now, the other thing about accuracy, for people of my generation, for people in my position, so journalism academics, editors, senior journalists, people who might read your CV and give you a job, inaccurate work is really obvious to us as a group. Maybe it's a generational thing. It's certainly, I guess, an education thing, because we've had our education for a long time, and we were also educated in a different period. I think that makes a bit of a difference as well. So inaccurate work is really, really, really obvious. So you need to get it right, because I and other people will notice if an apostrophe is in the wrong place. It sounds really pedantic, but there's a good reason for that. And the reason that we make such a big deal out of it is that when you move into the world of work, and that's only a few months away, and you want to be a professional communicator, then you need to be accurate, because people will expect you to be accurate. Let me just talk for a minute what I mean by professional communicator. Basically, a professional communicator is somebody who gets paid for communicating. And the reason that somebody is prepared to pay you is because you're pretty good at it. And it applies to journalists, obviously. It applies to public relations people. It applies to teachers and lecturers. And there's a whole host of other job titles that you've probably seen advertised. Corporate communications, digital marketing, social media. Anything with those words in the title, you are a professional communicator. And people will expect you to be accurate with your writing. There's no second chance. There's no, you'll resubmit the work and try again. You need to get it right first time. Now, before we go any further, I just want to apologise. I spend a lot of my time doing this in class. The reason I'm going to apologise here is because the last thing I want to do, is patronise anybody. So some of you may invest, I don't know, half an hour of your life in watching this video, and at the end of it you say, oh God, Gary, I knew all of that. Why do you think that I didn't know it all? Now, the reason I'm kind of doing it for the whole class is because I know that some people in the class do actually struggle with some of these aspects of accuracy that I'm going to talk about. My part of my job is to make sure that everybody reaches the same level. So I apologise if you know it all, and for those of you who don't know it all, then hopefully you'll get something from this. Now the reason that I think some of you get it and some of you don't get it is quite complex. In my experience, which as you know is because I'm so old, it's quite considerable. I've actually been teaching for 19 years now at universities, and teaching journalism, and I've taught international and overseas students, and domestic students. And what I've noticed over the last 19 years is a couple of things. Firstly, a lot of UK students who did their first degree in the UK and did their A-levels in the UK, they have A-level English, which is quite normal. You fall in love with the language and you want to make a career out of it, which is understandable. Something else that I've noticed over the years, and increasingly so, is that students of all descriptions, they spend ages writing online, whether it's Snapchat or WhatsApp or Instagram. Facebook is my generation, I know, TikTok, whatever it might be. You spend ages writing online. And the irony is, in my experience over the last nearly 2 decades, is that the standard of writing has actually fallen. I don't think I had a class like this 20 years ago. And that kind of baffles me a little bit, because I like to think that we as a civilization, as humanity, we actually move forward. But I think in terms of accuracy, it's that we've actually regressed a little bit, certainly for anybody educated in the UK. And I just want to say at this point, I don't blame students individually. I don't blame people individually for accuracy errors, because I think it runs much deeper than that. And I think one of the reasons, maybe, having spoken to a lot of school teachers over the last 20 years, accuracy, punctuation, grammar, spelling is not really emphasised like it used to be. That's kind of like for my generation. Your generation is all about expressing yourself, which is a wonderful thing, obviously. I would like to think that you can express yourself creatively and have good grammar and punctuation, but for some reason the powers that be in education think that one is more important than the other. So that's one possible reason, is that the teaching might not focus on accuracy as much as it should, and then of course your bad habits are engraved, they are deeply ingrained, and then when you go online and you start chatting to your mates, nobody picks you up online for missing a full stop or the wrong use of a comma or not having a capital letter where you should. So these habits tend to be reinforced. And the other reason why it might be that accuracy is becoming more of an issue, I'm not sure that students often read or practice quality writing as much as you used to. So if you're doing social media writing, that you tend to copy the same approach that other people doing that sort of writing do as well. So I'm not sure about the reasons behind it, but it's certainly happened over the past 20 years. And the reason why it's so important, just to reiterate, employers will judge you. I promise you that. If you send a CV to the BBC, to the Guardian, to CNN with a covering letter, and you've got accuracy errors in there, apostrophes in the wrong place, random use of capital letters, poor punctuation generally, then you will not get an interview, you will not get a call back, you will not get the job. And poor accuracy, this is a very tough pill to swallow, but it's absolutely true. Poor accuracy is the easiest way to not get work as a professional communicator. That's all the bad news. Let me give you one element of good news. The good news is that if you can fix your bad accuracy, you will stand out from the rest, because hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of young people in the UK, they really struggle with their accuracy. Now this sounds a bit blunt and brutal, but if you don't believe me, check out this letter which was sent to the Independent newspaper a few years ago. Now I'm so pleased that I saw this letter and made a note of it, because over the years I've had numerous conversations with editors, employers of other descriptions, senior journalists, and they have told me anecdotally, verbally, that they get a lot of emails from young people whose punctuation and grammar is terrible, therefore they will never work for them. But I've never seen it in writing until I saw this letter. So here's the letter. It's headlined in the Independent, "Graduates Can't Spell," which is a bit of a generalisation, but let's just roll with it for a minute. And this is from a guy called Rich Mortimer, who is head of talent at a company called Egress Software Technologies. And he said, "This summer I reviewed over 500 CVs for 20 graduate positions in our fast-growing technology company." So 20 jobs, 500 CVs. He's got to reduce those numbers somehow. And Rich managed to reduce it very easily. As he says here, just over half those applicants, about 250, were in the reject pile within 1 minute of their submissions being opened. Spelling mistakes, typographical errors, random capitalization, and eclectic font use accounted for the majority. What he means there at the end is the big swirly, horrible, cartoony type fonts that people use to make themselves stand out. What Rich is also saying here is he doesn't want you to stand out in the first instance. What he wants you to do is to make sure that you can demonstrate that you can write accurately with no spelling mistakes, no typographical errors, and no random capitalization. So I'm really pleased that I saw this letter, because it comes from somebody who knows, somebody who's actively involved in recruiting. So Rich works for a software company. Can you imagine if that was a journalism company? Whoever's sorting out those CVs, they're going to have a very easy job of getting through half of them and putting them in the reject pile. Folks, I don't want you to go into the reject pile. I really don't. What I want you to do is make sure that you do wonderfully well in your careers, starting with sending out your CV and pitch emails and covering emails. So everything that you produce from now onwards should be 100% accurate in terms of punctuation and spelling and grammar and so on. That includes emails, that includes social media, that includes CVs, and most importantly, between now and next Wednesday, that includes your individual portfolio for journalism project.